North Node in Virgo and in the 6th house. Introduction. With your North Node in Virgo in the 6th house, your North Node is doubled down in the house ruled by its same sign. This means that what you have mastered in the past you have overdone to an extreme, and it may be, or may have been, if you are further along your journey, more difficult for you than most to overcome your emotions and stay grounded. If you have personal planets in earth signs, this may come more naturally to you, but depending on your specific chart, it could be more challenging. Having your North Node in Virgo in the 6th house means your South Node is in Pisces in the 12th house. The sign, Virgo, of your North Node signifies the qualities you need to develop, but the house, 6th house, indicates in what area of life you most need to express them. Likewise, the sign, Pisces, of your South Node signifies the qualities you need to let go, but the house, 12th house, indicates from what area of life you most need to walk away. Qualities to cultivate: presence and participation, service and being helpful, practicality and caution, routine and organization, analysis and detail-orientedness, self-discipline, productivity and efficiency, resourcefulness, preparation and planning, cleanliness and hygiene. Where to cultivate them: job and co-workers, techniques and methods, daily routine, health, exercise, and nutrition, pets, problem solving, awareness and value of time, necessities, mental health, habits, qualities to let go, avoidance and withdrawal, escapism and spiritual bypassing, addictions, ingestive and non-ingestive victim mentality, extremism, confusion and vagueness, oversensitivity, self-doubt and feelings of inadequacy, giving up, the need for a savior, guide, parent, or mentor. Where to let go: solitude, spirituality and mysticism, the subconscious, unconscious, and collective conscious, hidden thoughts and repressed feelings, isolating institutions such as hospitals, monasteries, and prisons, dreams and imagination, universal archetypes, rest and restoration, hidden enemies and self-sabotage, altruism and selfless service, understanding the existence axis. Having the North Node in the 6th house and in Virgo places you on the existence axis. It is the body-spirit axis. It's a mutable axis of both physical and spiritual well-being. You may be too focused on or too detached from your body, too impractical or too unimaginative, too structured or too undefined. House 6 is ruled by Virgo and Mercury, though some say Vesta, which governs our mind and communication. The 6th house is the house of service. It's where our daily work and routine take place, and where we go to take care of our bodies. Virgo is detail-oriented, analytical, and communicative. Pisces, on the other hand, likes to lay back and look at the big picture. Pisces rules House 12, a complicated house of all that is hidden, spirituality, the unconscious, secrets. It's ruled by Neptune, planet of dreams and illusion. Virgo will fuss about the scrape on your knee and insist you need a doctor. Pisces will help you relax and remember that we all get scraped up in life. Both can be too self-sacrificing. Your life path involves balancing being hardworking and practical with trusting the universe and accepting the ebb and flow of life. Material versus immaterial is a major theme of your life. Your karmic classroom is in aligning your daily routine with your spiritual beliefs and deepest dreams. The mutable axes deal with our belief systems, so becoming either rigid or directionless are signs of imbalance. With your North Node in the 6th house in Virgo, you need to develop self-discipline, attention to detail, and a daily routine. You've already mastered the esoteric aspects of life. You have an intuitive spiritual wisdom. However, you might get so lost in the big picture that you never take practical action toward your goals. You have to accept that you live in a material world and inhabit a physical body, and you have to do your part to take care of both. You have to accept that no one else will do it for you. You have to take responsibility. Beware of your need to merge with those around you. Whenever you have a water south node and an earth north node, your natural tendency is to get lost in a sea of emotion, your own or others, at the expense of practicality and self-respect. You've got to learn to see emotional boundaries as part of emotional health, and allow everyone, including you, to take responsibility for their own feelings and survival. Let go of your need for self-dissolution and instead embrace a daily routine that accommodates your spirit of selfless service, without losing yourself in the process. Understanding is the central power of this axis, understanding and caring for the physical body and practical, daily affairs of life and work, as well as understanding the unity behind the illusion of separateness and the deeper spiritual truths that govern material life. You must see the truth of existence, a singularity expressed in the form of duality, so that it may know itself. This plays out especially in your body, and your physical health is an indicator of your spiritual and psychological health. Like the other mutable axis of 3/9, this is about seeing how the part fits into the whole, and how the whole supports the part. Your life lessons come through the ways you serve others, and the degree to which you understand the connection between the visible and invisible. The existence axis is about physical versus spiritual and psychological health, unity versus separateness, singularity versus duality, seclusion versus participation, details versus big picture, inner world versus outer world, order versus disorder, presence versus escapism, communication versus silence, criticism versus acceptance, realism versus imagination, and doing versus being. This axis is about managing self-care with care for others. Like all astrological axes, it's about balance. It isn't about obsessing over the body and details or neglecting the body to lose yourself in the psycho-spiritual realm, but learning to meet in the middle. It means having compassion for oneself as well as others, including all living beings, but still exercising healthy emotional boundaries. It means knowing when to work and when to rest. When you master this axis, you will have a holistic approach to health, empathy with boundaries, and selfless service without self-sacrifice. Ultimately, it is about balance. Perhaps you are already on your way. Your quest, practical wisdom. With your North Node in Virgo in the 6th house, your quest is to be of service in a practical way. Your resource for achieving it is your innate emotional and spiritual wisdom. You bring tremendous insight into this world due to many lifetimes spent developing your higher consciousness and compassion. However, you took this to excess and became detached from reality and other people. Now you are meant to bring your wisdom into practical daily life by getting organized. With the South Node in Pisces in the 12th house, you easily fall into victim consciousness in which you feel helpless, unsafe, and incapable of functioning in the world and achieving your goals. This leads you to an unending search for a savior or mentor whom you can trust blindly and to whom you can surrender. But this is a recipe for disaster. In this lifetime, it's not set up for you to find one. No one can give you enough reassurance to overcome your feeling of helplessness. Blindly following others will only lead you to ruin. The irony is that you already have everything you need to succeed. With this South Node placement, you bring tremendous spiritual wisdom into this life, and your innate sense of the divine means you intuitively know what direction to take. You just have to ground that wisdom in pragmatism. Moving from double water to double earth means you need to bring your deep emotional and spiritual wisdom and ground it in everyday, practical ways. Guided by the light within, you can create the outer structures you need to give yourself confidence, safety, and purpose. You'll never feel ready to go out into the world. At some point, life will push you to the point where you have to jump in the arena, ready or not. In this life, you are coming down from the mountaintop to participate in the marketplace. Your past, strengths, and excesses. Don't worry, you don't have to leave everything about the South Node behind. Again, it's about balance. The trick in balancing out the South Node is to embody the positive aspects while leaving behind the excessive and negative qualities. With a South Node in Pisces in the 12th house, going with the flow and trusting the universe comes naturally to you, but this is not your path this time around. In the past you spent a lot of time in contemplation and meditation, lost in deep thoughts and comfortable in your solitude. You spent past lives in hospitals, prisons, monasteries, and other places where you were institutionalized. The common theme is that you were removed from mainstream society and your daily routine and environment were determined by others. You often weren't in control of your daily life or your own body, because someone else decided what and when you would eat, sleep, and do. It's likely you tend to avoid dealing with the details and practicalities of daily life, to go with the flow in a haphazard and unorganized way, to avoid setting clear goals in favor of putting faith in a higher power, and neglect physical and mental health. You may have been raised in a religious household or had parents who were absent, addicted, or mentally unstable. In this life or past lives, you often put your faith in something larger than yourself and surrendered completely to that power. Sometimes you were even martyrized for it, and you may still tend to play the martyr in this life. You're accustomed to making sacrifices for others. It's likely you've been easily victimized by others, because they sense this energy left over from the past, and you may easily give your power away and fail to stand up for yourself. You may have had great vision, but you lacked the work ethic to turn it into reality. You think that others should recognize you for your vision rather than your accomplishments, but in this lifetime you have to earn recognition through physically manifesting your vision. With the South Node in Pisces in the 12th house, you too easily get sucked into daydreaming and inaction. You have a deeply sensitive nature that may sometimes put you at odds with others. Most people simply aren't as emotionally perceptive or in tune as you are. As a result, they can easily gaslight you or make you feel crazy for the subtle cues you're picking up on. However, you can trust your intuition. You've spent many lifetimes developing it. Just make sure you distinguish between intuition and fear. Remember, anxiety screams, intuition whispers. At worst, you may hide behind paranoid fantasies, letting others do the work while you wallow. Thankfully, you also bring immense compassion into this life. While most people need to learn to be more compassionate, you could actually use some boundaries. Having spent many lifetimes dissolving the ego and merging with oneness, of various kinds, you have a level of selflessness and empathy that immediately comforts others. You have an innate understanding of the unity and interconnectedness of all living beings, and your compassion leads you to real altruism. However, because you've taken your compassion to excess, others are likely to take advantage of it. You never developed a protective layer around yourself, so it's not instinctive for you to distrust others and defend yourself adequately. You're naturally drawn to the mystical side of life, sometimes escaping into daydreams, books, music, video games, films, and fantasies. You were often lost in vague ideas and philosophies, delving into the subconscious or into the heights of spiritual ecstasy. However, it's also likely you escaped through substance abuse and other forms of addiction. More than other placements, you may have emotional addictions too, even if the emotions are painful. One great strength of this placement is that you are at home within yourself and enjoy solitude. Unlike others who constantly depend on social validation and need company, you can be fairly independent psychologically and can find fulfillment within. Unlike others, you are comfortable with uncertainty and even chaos. You don't anxiously need a plan or to know how everything is going to turn out. This comfort with uncertainty is a great advantage, but now you must learn how to plan anyway. You have had many dreams, but it's likely that as soon as you ran into an obstacle, you quit. Giving up easily will never serve you in this life. You're meant to learn endurance and fortitude. Remember that all it takes to turn a failure into a setback is to try again. North Node Virgo 6th house people are learning the virtue of persistence and self-discipline. You will be a master at co-creating with the universe, once you learn to ground your insights in reality. Time for a new tactic. While this strategy worked very well for you in your early life or in past lives, it will now backfire on you. Instead, you need to take control of your daily life, work, routine, and physical and mental health. The more time you spend with your back to the world, the more paranoid and unstable you become. Life will no longer let you escape reality or lose yourself in your imagination for too long, because it undermines your self-confidence and exacerbates your nerves. Because you don't have much experience organizing your time and resources, you likely find it challenging. This in turn affects your work and relationships. Hopefully you had people in your early life who helped you get organized and budget your time, but even if you did, you need a lot of self-discipline to do it on your own. In this lifetime, your soul yearns to create order so that it can channel its intuitive flow and spiritual wisdom into a structure that can be of service to others. It wants to turn the dreams of past lives into the reality of this life. Adding a positive attitude to your routine can be even harder. You are not used to being in the world, only not of it. Sometimes it seems messy and unfair, and people can be callous and disappointing. You must build your endurance both physically and psychologically to carry out your duties with grace. At its best, Virgo is a very gracious sign. You likely have great healing abilities, and life will support any efforts you make towards your own healing, physically or psychologically, or healing others. The key is to make your own effort, as much as possible. Don't rely on others to keep you healthy or stable. While you bring an uncommon level of compassion into this life, it's likely that you get swept away by your feelings to a point where you're not able to be of practical use to the very people you most want to help. In this life, you're learning to set and maintain clear boundaries so that you can still be helpful, both to yourself and to others. You are here to be of service to people without letting them walk all over you. Virgo is very resourceful. This means recognizing and leveraging the value of all your resources, temporal, mental, material, and social. You're meant to cultivate your talents through deliberate practice, make use of your time to be productive and efficient, use your money to grow your net worth, and connect with people who can build with you. One beautiful thing about this placement is that it's your duty to stop fantasizing and finally turn your dreams into reality. Before you begin, I cannot emphasize enough that this process of psychological evolution does not require you to completely abandon your South Node and run willy-nilly into your North Node. When people do this, they often misinterpret their lessons and go off track. For instance, early on I tried to actively cultivate the qualities of my own North Node, but I still had so many habits, good and bad, in excess, from my South Node that I hadn't fully understood or gotten control of yet. Those South Node tendencies actively undermined and inhibited my ability to pursue my North Node, even though I truly believed that's what I was doing. So instead we must first seek to understand our South Node. Every quality, and every sign, has positive and negative manifestations, depending on its context, how it is used, and how evolved the person using it is. For example, with your South Node in Pisces, you're incredibly empathetic, but this empathy can lead you to playing rescuer to people who just take and take from you. It's not about disowning your compassion and becoming selfish and mean, it's about understanding when and how to leverage your empathy in a way that empowers rather than enables people. Maybe you don't need to take in your friend who left their partner and has other places they could go, but you can help by lending them a sympathetic ear and helping them find a roommate. Even more easily, we can misunderstand the lessons of our North Node, precisely because it is the most foreign to us, unless we have personal planets in the same placement or element, which makes it easier. In your case, someone with a North Node in Virgo in the 6th house may think they just need to fill every hour of their day with something productive, but this would be an immature expression of that placement. Instead, waiting and looking for lessons about how to be more efficient with their current tasks and obligations is a healthier and more effective way to start. Then when they want to incorporate a new hobby into their routine, they'll already have some understanding of how to adjust their schedule without sacrificing their responsibilities. Of course, this isn't a linear process. We don't check our lessons off one by one on a list until we get to the reward at the end, and we don't simply move from one end of the axis to the other, though I may sometimes write it that way for the sake of clarity. In reality, our life is our best teacher. Our life is constantly bringing us lessons and reflecting our evolutionary stage back to us, showing us what we've mastered and what we still need to learn. Even more important than anything I've written in this book is that you judiciously reflect on how the themes of your nodal axis have manifested in your life specifically and in the people you've encountered, especially when there is a pattern, and there are always patterns. And just because a lesson repeats doesn't mean you didn't get it right the first time. It often means you're now dealing with the same subject at a higher level. Pay attention to your life. Both the South Node and North Node want the same thing, but they approach the desire from opposite perspectives. In the past, we've been pursuing our soul's deepest desire with the approach of the South Node, and the experience of never really getting what we want is what builds the pressure to pursue the North Node. The North Node path does not feel comfortable, safe, or familiar to us. It may even disgust us sometimes. But life will repeatedly deny us our deep desire until we learn and integrate the missing end of the polarity, the North Node we've left underdeveloped. In your case, your instinct to go with the flow of life only causes you to lose, until you stop drifting like a Pisces and start analyzing like a Virgo. The only way you can live your dreams in this life is to actually work for them, step by step, every day. Oftentimes we do not begin to turn towards our North Node until we've truly exhausted the strategies of our South Node. At that point, we have explored all the positive and negative effects of our South Node habits and instincts, and we're able to use them with discernment instead of compulsion. But this point may come only when we feel completely defeated by our life. Exhausted, we're finally forced to try a new strategy, and we end up gaining even more than our deep desire, more than we ever dreamed. The fulfillment of our North Node promise doesn't look like becoming an embodiment of only our North Node, but instead embodying the best qualities of both the South and the North Node. Health, being in the body, in the present. South Node Pisces 12th house people are moving from the spiritual body to the physical body represented by the 6th house, so their karmic lessons may show up in their health and illness, as well as in their general attitude toward their bodies. In the past, institutions and organizations took care of their diet and exercise regimes, so they have not had much experience deciding what to put in their bodies or how to take care of them. Taking control of these things, while they may feel strong resistance, is ultimately incredibly empowering for them. Often there is a psychosomatic element of the illness, and more than most, North Node Virgo 6th house people benefit from the placebo effect and positive thinking. However, they are also more prone to the nocebo effect. This is partly because the 6th house is ruled by Mercury and therefore deals with the intellect. This means that poor thinking and communication can also manifest as illness for these folks. Often, dreams can give clues to communication issues. Even if it's not possible to communicate directly with the person, writing letters without sending them or venting into a journal or voice recorder or video blog can alleviate the blockage. It's not that they should treat their health solely through the mind, that would be slipping into their South Node. As always, it's about balance. It's crucial for these folks to treat their illnesses, aches, and pain both through Western medicine and through mindfulness practices, which have been proven as effective in countless studies. A simple internet search for placebo effect or mindfulness and healing will show this. Many times, the body will tell North Node Virgo 6th house people when they're off track. For example, if they're in a very toxic environment at work or school, they may inexplicably feel sick every Monday morning. It's the body's way of saying, don't go back there. These folks need to learn to listen to their bodies. Tracking their symptoms and feelings in a journal can help them collect data and notice patterns. These folks can also benefit from an elimination diet, which is when we eliminate one food at a time for a certain period to see how it affects our bodies, mood, mind, and more. It's surprising how even if one isn't allergic to something, they can still have an inflammatory response or subtle sensitivity to that food. Going through a list of the top 10 most common allergens can be a good start. There are many resources listed in the North Node Virgo 6th house workbook on northnodesignandhouse.com. More than any other placement, South Node Pisces 12th house people are highly likely to not identify with their body. It may simply be that they live more of their life in their head, or to the extreme, they can experience severe dysmorphia. They have simply spent so many lifetimes disassociated from their body and physical reality that they struggle to feel embodied in this lifetime. Grounding activities like time in nature, somatic breathwork, yoga, qigong, exercise, and even just tuning into their 5 senses can be the practice they need to alleviate this pain. More than any other nodal position, South Node Pisces 12th house people need to be careful with alcohol and drugs. In fact, they often have a natural high, especially if they develop an effective meditation practice and good diet. But indulging in mind-altering substances is their kryptonite. It's something to limit, if not avoid altogether. In fact, many of these folks enter this life with the intuition they shouldn't indulge in drugs and alcohol. Their soul knows they have abused it in the past. They may have been born to parents or other family members with substance abuse or mental health issues. That's life showing them what it is like to be on the receiving end of such behavior. North Node Virgo 6th house people are here to bring order to chaos, both in their personal lives and in the lives of others. A clean and organized environment is essential for their mental health. In fact, visual clutter is stressful to the mind and results in less efficient thinking and visual processing, as well as lower subjective well-being and even unhealthy eating. Soothing their psychological state reaps endless returns. When they're in the right headspace, North Node Virgo 6th house people can accomplish more in an hour than most people do in 3 days. When they figure out how to hack their brain for self-confidence, they are unstoppable. What gives them this confidence is the feeling of accomplishment, productivity and checking things off their to-do list. Cleaning the house, paying the bills, and making lists are psychologically rewarding for these folks. It's well known that the simple act of making a list relieves the mind of the psychological burden of remembering everything on that list. Then the act of crossing things off is even more satisfying. Paying attention to their hygiene is another confidence booster, because South Node Pisces 12th house people have spent so many lifetimes disassociated from their bodies, they don't intuitively know how to take care of the body. It's essential they learn to see the body as an extension of their whole self, and do the small daily routines they need to take good care of it. This only reaps benefits socially, professionally, and physically. Getting in touch with reality. Due to spending so much of their past in seclusion from the world, South Node Pisces 12th house people know how to entertain themselves with the power of their mind and imagination. But in this lifetime, it backfires. What they need to be doing is producing positive and tangled results in the material world. These folks have a strong connection to the collective unconscious, and learning how to manage that connection is their challenge. If they don't learn how to direct that energy, it becomes a weakness, resulting in paranoia and anxiety. All forms of escapism, daydreaming, substances, excessive sleep, excessive entertainment, are counterproductive and undermine their confidence. They spend more of their life in their heads than actually living, and as a result, they never gain the experience they need to feel confident in the world. They are guilty of never getting into the arena, always staying on the sidelines, complaining about their life. However, if they can find an outlet for their imagination, a service to provide for others, they can transform their weakness into an advantage. The key is to make their ideas tangible somehow. An idea is worthless as long as it remains in someone's head. Instead, they need to communicate their ideas by manifesting them in the real, physical world. When they find themselves drifting into daydreams, they need to limit how much time they spend in their imagination and shift their focus into making their dreams a reality. The challenge is that any form of escapism easily becomes an addiction for South Node Pisces 12th house people. It takes tremendous discipline to break this emotional addiction. South Node Pisces 12th house people can easily get lost in a sea of confusion. They question everything and doubt their own perceptions to the point where they become paralyzed because they don't trust their own mind at all. They can also be highly superstitious and prone to magical thinking, always looking for messages that lead them to make meaning where there is none. More than anyone else, South Node Pisces 12th house people's deep nature makes them vulnerable to emotional reasoning, when they draw conclusions based on the intensity of their own emotions rather than the facts. They may interpret information in a way that reinforces their emotional responses, leading to biased conclusions that align with their feelings rather than reality. Emotional experiences can lead them to make broad conclusions based on specific incidents, causing them to view situations through a distorted lens. This is when talking to a therapist or other trusted person can be of enormous benefit to North Node Virgo 6th house people. They often spent their early lives with caregivers or others who invalidated their perceptions, and they now need someone to validate and reflect reality back to them. These folks feel much better when they can check their own perception against someone else's, then they feel confident enough to act. If they don't want to talk to anyone, using basic critical thinking questions and cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, techniques can help them check their assumptions on their own. Tuning into the physical, observable details also helps them ground into the present moment and reality. It can alleviate their anxiety and confusion. Activities requiring precision and accuracy contain great spiritual lessons, especially because North Node Virgo 6th house people are learning to see the spiritual in the material. Whatever they do, prioritizing precision in the way they do it is what will make them successful. The point is that in this lifetime, these folks cannot figure everything out in their head. They have to experiment with reality in order to gather the data they need to proceed. However, this doesn't mean they need to totally abandon their intuition. There are limits to logic, which can't usually account for shades of gray, uncertainty, probabilities, cognitive bias, ethics, or too much complexity and unpredictability, real life. Since they've spent so many lifetimes honing their intuition, North Node Virgo 6th house people can usually trust it to guide them in the right direction, but they need to use logic to figure out how to get there. For example, they might have always known that they wanted to be a writer, which is actually a very good profession for this nodal placement, but they need to experiment with different types of writing and use their logic to determine what schools to apply for, what genre to focus on, and how to get published. In fact, these folks have a tremendous ability to transform the chaotic flow of life into organized form. Once they have a goal to do this, whether by turning their emotions into artwork or symptoms of an illness into a routine that alleviates them, everything falls into place. They are learning to master this newfound gift they have of transforming chaos into order. They are making the spiritual manifest in the material. Planning versus pursuing. Once South Node Pisces 12th house people figure out how soothing it is to plan ahead, they can go a little plan crazy. In fact, they enjoy planning so much that they forget to follow their plans. It's much easier to plan than it is to pursue, and without setting boundaries around it, these folks end up using the planning stage to avoid the execution stage. So once they've made a plan, they need to commit to executing it, and shift their focus entirely to the execution. For example, North Node Virgo 6th house people might set aside an afternoon to figure out a 5-year plan. From that they can determine their 1-year plan, then every step they need to take each month to accomplish it. Based on this month's goals, they can create a daily routine that will help them meet their targets. That night, they can jot down their plan for the next day. But then they need to forget the big picture and just focus on that day. When they wake up, they should focus simply on executing their plan for the day. Then at the end, before they go to bed, they can reflect on how they did and whether they need to tweak anything for the next day. Then the process repeats, improving day by day. At the end of each week or month, they can look back and see how well they did, and adjust their future plans from there. The point is that they can't focus too much on the big picture, which is what Pisces is all about, the universe, the entirety of consciousness, the oneness, the all. They get so lost gazing up at the heavens that they don't look where they're walking here on Earth. Actually, South Node Pisces 12th house people can be very accident-prone for this very reason. Sometimes the big picture overwhelms them so much, either with awe or anxiety, or both, that they become paralyzed and unable to act. It's a wonderful quality to be able to see the big picture, but now they need to use this ability to extrapolate a practical strategy for pursuing it. Then they need to focus on just that next step. More than any other placement, it helps these folks to take life one day at a time. If they focus on making today as successful as it can be, it won't take long for them to make progress. Even if they have an off day, that's okay, they get to start over again tomorrow. Sometimes South Node Pisces 12th house people need to withdraw and have their alone time. They may get overwhelmed with events, situations, or feelings and need to go back up to the mountain to get some perspective. This is totally alright as long as they don't stay up there indefinitely. However, when they withdraw, sometimes it scares the people closest to them. For instance, when they pull back from their partner without warning or explanation, it can trigger the person's insecurity. So it's helpful for the North Node Virgo 6th house person to not only make a plan, but share their plan. Even if the other people involved don't fully understand why they need to withdraw, giving them a heads up and some idea of when to expect a return is often all they need to feel soothed. No matter how hard it is, forthright communication about their plans can make or break their relationships. Another aspect of this is punctuality. Because South Node Pisces 12th house people have primarily experienced life as an endless flow, they are not used to using clock time. They lose track of time and arrive late to their appointments, and this doesn't just hurt and disrespect the other person, it hurts the South Node Pisces person's confidence, too, and makes them feel guilty and incompetent. It's therefore essential for them to use a planner, calendar, notes, alarms, anything that helps them keep track of time. There are many resources listed in the North Node Virgo 6th house workbook on northnodesignandhouse.com. Routine and productivity. Because South Node Pisces 12th house people have spent many lifetimes in prisons, monasteries, and/or hospitals, they have not had much control over their daily life and routine. Their routine was set for them and they didn't need to be aware of time's passage, they just followed the bell, gong, or whatever signaled that it was time to change activities. They lived in a state of timelessness, formlessness, and flow. As a result, they struggle to adapt to life in the world now, unless they have generous earth placements. Time management and punctuality are big challenges for them. The more organized, strategic, and detailed these folks try to be, the more fulfilled they will feel. As they gain the self-discipline to manage their time, they'll automatically become more empowered and self-confident. In fact, cleaning and organizing their physical environment can be wonderfully therapeutic for these folks. A cluttered visual space easily exacerbates the chaos in their own minds, but setting even just one small area in order can alleviate psychological distress and empower them to take care of more challenging tasks. Likewise, when they find themselves ruminating on a social or emotional problem, it can help them to do something productive on a tangible level. This allows their mind to solve the problem in the background while they focus on something that makes them feel better. Exercise is another helpful way to do this. Channeling anxiety into productivity really works for these folks. Thankfully, South Node Pisces 12th house people have an innate sense of time's spiritual value. They know that an hour of their time is worth more than money or material possessions, because it is the only truly limited resource we all have. It's also the only thing we truly have control over, if not physically, then mentally. South Node Pisces 12th house people also bring an intuitive awareness of spiritual law into this life. It's likely they spent many past lives in states of intense meditation. They're naturally attuned to the higher realms of human nature and can easily get in touch with their higher selves if they try. The only problem is that in the past, they took this ability to an extreme and became totally divorced from the world, out of touch with others. The North Node in Virgo in the 6th house is very much about bringing the spiritual wisdom and awareness of Pisces into daily life. This is about seeing the spiritual significance in the mundane details and reality of every day. In this life, setting aside time for spiritual practice in their daily routine can really help these people. They still need to escape sometimes and get in touch with their spiritual nature because this is what guides them, but they need to put boundaries around it so they don't get carried away. A meditation practice, spiritual reading, yoga, or time in nature are all things to add to the schedule so that they can satisfy this need. As a bonus, some of these things also benefit their physical health. Pets can be an enormous boon to the formation of a routine. North Node Virgo 6th house people are naturally nurturing and love to care for other living beings, especially those that can't care for themselves. A pet forces them into a routine, teaches them the importance of the physical body and its needs, and provides them with an outlet for their unconditional love. North Node Virgo 6th house people simple love to give, and pets give back in ways human beings can't. Time is the only truly finite resource we have. Developing a routine isn't about limiting our freedom to go with the flow, but about leveraging our freedom to make the best use of the time we have on this earth. Externalizing the internal. South Node Pisces 12th house people tend to solve their emotional problems on their own. Introverted and introspective, they turn inward for understanding and solace. Others don't always understand this, but these folks simply are not as socially dependent as others. It's a big strength of theirs. This can frustrate and confuse people who process their emotions verbally and socially. Owing to their unusual level of self-awareness, North Node Virgo 6th house people are able to turn their analytic abilities onto their inner worlds and make tremendous strides in self-improvement that would be mind-boggling to other people. Dream analysis can be especially insightful. Unfortunately, this skill backfires when they fail to place boundaries around their introspection. Without discipline, they can think and feel themselves into an inner chaos of anxiety, doubt, and confusion, and they easily lose touch with reality. In fact, due to past lives spent in asylums, these folks can have a strong fear of losing their sanity. It's likely that their psyches became unbalanced in the past. Pisces and the 12th house deal with the past, the subconscious, and anything hidden. It is the house of self-undoing. As a result, these folks can get easily lost in their fears and in their dreams. If they're not careful, if they don't learn to stop indulging in their bad mental habits, they can easily waste their lives descending into a dark place. While their introspection still works to some degree, once they figure out the inner aspect of their problem, they need to commit to external action to complete the resolution. This lifetime is all about practical action for North Node Virgo 6th house people. After assessing their challenge inwardly, they need to do something external, physical, and pragmatic to fully solve it. Solving it inwardly is only half the equation. Even if the problem is purely emotional, like they become aware of a repressed emotion they need to release, they need to work on releasing it physically, through something like somatic breathwork, physical exercise, or creative self-expression. Everything they resolve inwardly, they need to manifest externally. That is the great gift of this axis, to bring the spiritual wisdom of Pisces into the physical world through practical Virgoan service. Only then can their inner wisdom truly help others. South Node Pisces 12th house people need to avoid self-doubt at all costs. Due to so many lifetimes of interrogating their own consciousness for answers and discovering the trickiness of the egoic mind, they tend not to trust themselves and to actually invalidate themselves. Self-invalidation is a huge problem for them, leading to a downward spiral of self-doubt and feelings of inadequacy. When they look outside, their human negativity bias tends to ignore the counter-evidence and focus solely on whatever confirms their bias. It leads to a dark hole of paranoia and self-doubt. More than any other sign, North Node Virgo 6th house people need to practice critical thinking and other techniques to check themselves before they wreck themselves. Any way they can find to externalize this process, by talking to a friend or therapist, by writing down the facts logically, by listing the pros and cons, is helpful. They should neither invalidate their intuition, which is usually spot on, when they're not confusing it with anxiety, nor indulge their fears, but find a way to verbalize the issue. In the past, South Node Pisces 12th house people developed radical faith in life. It's the biggest gift from their past lives, but sometimes they get lost in their inner turmoil and forget this faith. Having some sort of daily practice that reminds them of their faith in the big picture can help tremendously. But again, that's only half the solution. They then need to validate their faith through physical action in the external world. Taking action towards their goals every day builds confidence on top of their strong foundation of faith. With that, they can achieve anything. The worst thing they can do is doubt the purity of their goal. They are committed to having goals that have a pure motive, are harmless, and that will be of service to others. Self-trust is their biggest key to success. But all too often, these folks begin to doubt themselves and the purity of their motivations. Once they start doing this, they tend to veer off course, abandoning their goal because they can't see the altruistic role they actually play by pursuing it. Then they waste time, even years of their lives, pursuing an alternate goal just because it seems more altruistic or selfless. Instead, it's better for them to trust their instincts even if they can't see how their pursuit will help others yet. The understanding will come in time. They just have to trust themselves and act on faith. Confidence through action. South Node Pisces 12th house people have not had much practical experience, so they don't feel confident participating in the world. In order to protect their egos, they will dismiss and downplay the importance of worldly things, telling themselves that only the inner life is valid and meaningful. But the truth is that they're scared. They'd rather critique others from the sidelines than prove they know what they're talking about. So it's essential they take action in this life, not to prove themselves to others, but to prove themselves to themselves. As long as they remain isolated and fail to make their efforts public, they will never develop the self-confidence they crave. They think they need to feel confident before they can act, but the opposite is true. They will only develop confidence as they take action. South Node Pisces 12th house people can tend to be theoretical. They want to thoroughly understand the idea of something before they even try to do it. They can focus so much on accumulating knowledge of a subject that while they may be the leading expert on the theory, they've never truly put their ideas to the test. For these folks, a hands-on approach is best. They need to learn by doing, experimenting, discovering what does and does not work through their own process. Thankfully, they have no egoic attachment to being right and are humble enough to make mistakes, which only leads them to learning even more. Since they are fast learners, it doesn't take them long to figure out how to succeed. They just have to get off the couch and try. For most people in this world, understanding their feelings and psyches is a gargantuan feat that they may never accomplish. But for North Node Virgo 6th house people, it comes naturally. However, awareness doesn't automatically solve their problems. What they're learning to do is change their feelings and their psychology not through reflection, but through action. Once these folks see that being and doing are not separate processes, but one unitive process, they will understand what they need to do in order to feel and be their best. Pragmatic compassion, from victimhood to empowerment. South Node Pisces 12th house people are some of the most intensely compassionate. They can be more affected by people's suffering than the people who are actually suffering. Extremely sensitive and easily wounded, their empathy is touching, but it can also be completely useless. While they're a pro at selflessness and compassion, without practical application and strong boundaries, their compassion turns into desperation and invasiveness that turns others off. As an earth sign, Virgo values pragmatism and tangible results. North Node Virgo 6th house people are called to develop practical skills and use them to serve others. In this lifetime, mere compassion isn't enough to help people, it must be coupled with pragmatic action. Volunteering is a great outlet for this, and a regular volunteer gig can add some structure and routine to their life. With the South Node Pisces 12th house penchant for creativity, it's likely that a creative outlet can also provide a material means for these folks to ground their emotion and wisdom. For North Node Virgo 6th house people, service is the remedy for their suffering. Their innate compassion and non-judgmental attitude means that they easily identify with others. Having been victims of the abuse of power in past lives, these folks easily fear their own power and can subconsciously disempower themselves. They don't like the idea of having power over others, or even themselves, because that would make them responsible for their own fate. Sometimes, South Node Pisces 12th house people focus their compassion and need to be of service on themselves. They get trapped in victim consciousness and become self-absorbed. They personalize everything, assuming that others' emotional problems and actions are somehow about them. They use their sensitivity as an excuse for tyrannical or simply arrogant behavior. They can have the attitude that they are so special and different that they are somehow exempt from ordinary problems and ways of living. They'd rather die than join the mainstream. This focus on the self keeps them in a state of powerlessness. By making others responsible for how they feel, they give their power away recklessly. They can refuse to grow up and take responsibility for how they feel. Yes, they are more sensitive than most people, but that doesn't mean anyone owes them anything. We cannot walk through this world expecting everyone to change for us. We have to change the way we walk. To remedy this, North Node Virgo 6th house people must shift their focus from self to other. When they focus on being of service and enter a mode of equality and compassion for all, they manifest an almost magical ability to heal the world. However, everything in moderation. Equality and compassion for all includes themselves. This involves the delicate balance of seeing oneself as truly equal to others, equally deserving of kindness, empowerment, and respect. They must beware of disempowering themselves by playing the victim as well as disempowering others by pitying and enabling them. They must also beware a tendency to idealize others and put them on a pedestal. Whether they view themselves as inferior or superior to others, they are wrong. They must learn to stop comparing, because it is the ego that compares. When we release our grip on our own self-identity and self-judgment, we begin to feel better. To idealize someone is actually to dehumanize them, to fail to see them accurately, as a human being with both flaws and good features. Seeing themselves as unworthy of the friend or partner they desire, South Node Pisces 12th house people create self-fulfilling prophecies through their avoidance or unconscious self-sabotage. It's a very sad and painful situation, both for them and for the person who might have also wanted to get to know them. Even if they do get into a friendship or partnership with the person they've idealized, their idealization still sabotages their success. The South Node Pisces 12th house person's idealization sets expectations that the person can't possibly meet, leading to disappointment and frustration, which sometimes leads to relationship patterns of idealization, disillusionment, and breakups followed by a repetition with the next partner. Idealization also causes these folks to ignore the person's faults or negative traits, leaving them vulnerable to abuse. At worst, the partner takes advantage of the South Node Pisces 12th house person and can easily manipulate them. At the very least, idealizing someone prevents a genuine relationship from forming, as the South Node Pisces 12th house person focuses more on the image than the actual person. At the same time, the reverse is likely at play, an unrealistic devaluation of oneself. This low self-esteem creates a cascade of negative effects and self-fulfilling prophecies in which their physical and psychological health suffer and their behavior becomes self-sabotaging. An unhealthy ego manifests both as arrogance and self-loathing, but a healthy ego manifests as both confidence and humility. North Node Virgo 6th house people need to bring their weak ego into healthy balance, or else it will ruin them. Like so much with North Node Virgo 6th house people, the remedy for this is to remove their emotions as much as possible and try to see both themselves and others objectively. Practicing mindfulness and self-reflection, identifying triggers and reframing negative thoughts, focusing on the facts and setting boundaries, and practicing self-compassion can all help. This is all easier said than done, but therapy, self-help books, and the practices included in the North Node Virgo 6th house ebook can all help. Finding a healthy size for the ego is not a quick or simple change, but can take many years of diligent effort. It is worth it. Due to many incarnations of helplessness and depending on outer structures and organizations for their survival, these folks need to develop as much self-sufficiency as they can, emotionally, physically, financially, spiritually, and psychologically. Devotion comes naturally to them, and it's so instinctive for them to give up their power that they often get burned quite a bit before they learn their lesson. Instead, they need to devote themselves to their own self-sufficiency. Only once they have taken care of their own needs will they be able to truly be of selfless service. but that selfless service shouldn't be to an external power. Otherwise, their devotion to another turns into their own victimization and downfall. Persistence and reliability. Usually when South Node Pisces 12th house people encounter an obstacle or opposition to their goal, they give up. Unless they have strong earth or fire placements elsewhere in their chart, they have so little confidence acting in the world that any excuse to stop trying is welcome. It's part of their pattern of withdrawal, it gives them a reason to escape. Of course, it doesn't work out for them when they give up. Life continues to bring them the same situation over and over until they break through their blockages. In fact, they often believe they're making a selfless sacrifice when really they're giving up on what they truly desire because they don't have enough confidence to pursue it. For example, the South Node Pisces 12th house person may be caught in a love triangle with two friends, and they selflessly give the person they want to their competition, believing that's what their love interest wants anyway. Of course, why would they ever want the South Node Pisces 12th house person? The others may remain a couple or may break up and date other people, but it's not until years later that the South Node Pisces 12th house person realizes that they were their love interest's top pick after all. If they had just acted selfishly, if they'd had the confidence to go for what they wanted instead of giving up, everyone might have been happier. In this life, martyrdom simply doesn't work for these people. In fact, what they think is martyrdom is actually self-betrayal. Instead they have to learn to go after what they want with everything they've got, and to stick to their goals reliably until they reach them. This isn't just about being reliable for others, it's about being reliable for themselves. It's about developing accountability to themselves as well as self-trust. They will never trust the world enough to go out into it without fear. What they can do is trust themselves enough to have their own back when they move out into the world. Daily work. While the second house deals with personal income and the 10th house deals with the big picture of career and professional path, the 6th house is more about the routine and details of daily work and jobs. In this life these folks provide service through work, and it's important that they're paid for that work. South Node Pisces 12th house people tend to give and give without getting anything back, but they are learning that it's fair for them to be compensated. They must beware of getting sucked into excessive free labor, whether it's through excessive volunteering, helping family and friends, or the emotional labor of an intimate relationship. They actually have bad karma around self-sacrifice. With the North Node in the 6th house, it's likely that karmic lessons come through their co-workers and, if they have them, employees. Such people challenge North Node Virgo 6th house folks to stand up for themselves, hold others accountable, and stop projecting their shadow onto people. Selecting one specific goal or career path can provide the direction these folks need. They tend to lack boundaries, including around their habits and pursuits. They can easily become a half-jack of all trades, master of none. Accepting limits, not around their own capacity for accomplishment, but around what's practically possible to do in one lifetime, can be incredibly healthy for them, relieving them from the burden of overwhelm. Humility, separation, and dealing with ego. South Node Pisces 12th house people have spent many lifetimes in dissolution of the ego, and this can still be a major concern in their early life. In the past, they purified themselves by questioning their own motives to recognize where they were lacking in virtue, humbling themselves to the fact that nobody is truly pure. In fact, this preoccupation with purity can be a big hindrance to their success. Because of this experience, they also have to deal with the consequences of a weak ego. They need to recognize that they have completed this process, and that ego is not all bad, it is what gives us identity, drive, and protection. In fact, when they try to kill their ego in this life, it will lead them off track of their life path. Because their ego is underdeveloped, it can be hard for South Node Pisces 12th house people to trust it or to find the right size for the ego. Unless they have strong fire or earth placements elsewhere in their chart, they don't have a strong enough ego to defend themselves and don't do well with confrontation, competition, or the myriad ways that others react to feeling threatened by them. Instead, they need to focus on developing a healthy ego. An unhealthy ego manifests as both insecurity and arrogance. A healthy ego manifests as both humility and confidence. These folks really fear being arrogant and selfish, but they can trust their own intentions because they have spent so many lifetimes purifying themselves. As long as their intention is pure, they will be okay. What South Node Pisces 12th house people need to recognize is that the whole point of manifesting on the physical plane is precisely to have a separate ego and identity, to understand who that personality uniquely is, and to take care of it, body and mind, and fulfill its highest, truest potential. Their higher self is a steward of their ego and must take care of it, it is part of the whole. However, there are obvious benefits to this past karma. These folks tend not to be materialistic and they are innately aware of the inherent spiritual value of everything. They really do have pure motives, they just have to build a strong enough ego to actually trust them. Hope. Deep down, South Node Pisces 12th house people know that without hope, the soul dies, and their capacity to maintain hope in the face of adversity is almost superhuman. Beneath any fleeting melancholy there is a steel optimism, and they refuse to let life defeat them or their faith in humanity. They deeply believe that life and human beings are fundamentally good, and even in the darkest of times, they can find the light within themselves. This makes them incredible spiritual torchbearers capable of uplifting the collective, or even just their friends and family, with their undeniable inner wisdom. Of course, with this comes a tendency to idealize people and situations and hold on to things long past their expiration date. While it's easy for them to give up pursuits they deem selfish and only about themselves, South Node Pisces 12th house people never want to abandon anyone else. This is actually more to do with their own self-aggrandizement, they're not willing to be the bad guy in someone else's story. As a result, their capacity for hope can be wildly misdirected and keep them stuck in bad situations. It helps them to acknowledge the fact that their hope for one thing is a distraction from their hope for something else. For example, the South Node Pisces 12th house person might cling to the hope of a relationship because really, they're afraid to be alone, they have less hope for themselves and their own self-sufficiency, or the self-sufficiency of the other person. What appears to be a noble act is actually an excuse to continue enabling a codependency. Or they may continue living at home with their family well into their adulthood with the excuse that their family needs them, clinging to the hope that someday their family will be stable enough not to need them anymore. But this is because they lack confidence in both their own and their family members' ability to thrive independently. In short, South Node Pisces 12th house people need to carefully examine their hopes and evaluate whether they are just excuses because they're afraid to hope for something better. Too often, their hopes and dreams actually keep them small. Discernment. Because South Node Pisces 12th house people bring such an enormous amount of compassion into this life, others are easily drawn to them, including those who would take advantage. Narcissists, energy vampires, and all kinds of needy people who are sometimes, though not always, malicious will attach to them. Such people can drag the North Node Virgo 6th house person down, hold them back in life, drain their energy, and undermine their confidence. Part of the difficulty is that the South Node Pisces 12th house person is a sponge, they easily absorb others' feelings and energy, thereby internalizing other people's issues. They've spent so much time in safe, controlled environments that moving in the world amongst other people is like sending an innocent, ignorant child to the seedy part of town. They don't know how to discriminate between helpful and harmful people, and they don't know how to protect themselves. They are so non-judgmental that even judging others as helpful or harmful seems bad to them. They don't even want to discriminate because they don't want to judge others unjustly. This comes from having been judged themselves, and from so much time spent in introspection. These folks have a profound understanding of the common plight of humanity, and they know that everyone is doing the best they can with the light they have right now. But there is a difference between judgment and discernment. What's not okay to them is to say that a person is good or evil. It's easier for them to say that a behavior is helpful or harmful, and that as long as someone displays a harmful behavior, they need to have stronger boundaries with that person. Discernment doesn't have to be a judgmental process, it's simply a matter of recognizing that everyone is somewhere on the wheel of conscious evolution, and while no stage in the process is inherently better or worse than any other, after all, every one of us must pass through every step. There are some that are more compatible than others. Sometimes we simply ascend too far beyond a person to have anything in common with them anymore. And sometimes we're the ones who are too far behind for someone else. Of course, that doesn't mean we can't help those who are at a lower point than us. But words don't teach, we can only lead by the example we set for others. South Node Pisces 12th house people can sometimes run the risk of spiritual or moral arrogance, thinking of themselves as superior to those who lack integrity or insight. But this is a form of ego and self-righteousness. It is a delicate balance to strike, but we must help who we can, humbly, by setting an example, and we must also protect ourselves from those who might not know better than to drain us. When South Node Pisces 12th house people allow themselves to be exploited, intentionally or not, everyone loses, because the only sustainable way for people to expand their consciousness is to take responsibility for helping themselves. When people seek compassion outside themselves, it's a bottomless pit. Only their own self-compassion can fulfill them. Unfortunately, it's not something we can do for one another or teach one another. An easy way to assess people is to ask ourselves, how do I feel after interacting with this person? Do I feel drained, guilty, ashamed, tired, sad, angry, or another negative feeling? Or do I feel empowered, uplifted, confident, joyful, appreciative, or another positive feeling? How about neutral? Taking an hour one day to reflect on the people in our lives can be very informative and help guide us on how to move forward in our relationships. Then we know who is safe for us and who is not, who to strengthen our boundaries with and who we can relax around. This is not something to feel guilty about. Teaching someone about boundaries, not through preaching, but through practice, is one of the best ways we can help them and create a positive ripple effect in their social network. By asserting their emotional, physical, and energetic boundaries, North Node Virgo 6th house people are teaching others how to stop abusing people. Being easier targets, and more sensitive than most, makes them the best teachers of this lesson. Oftentimes, the subconscious motive for these folks to accept abuse is that they're secretly waiting for their own suffering to be recognized and rewarded. South Node Pisces 12th house people can have a real martyr complex. They think if they continue to tolerate abuse, they'll somehow be rewarded for it one day. But that is fiction, a myth. They will never be rewarded for their suffering. Most importantly, South Node Pisces 12th house people can forget that their primary responsibility is to themselves. It is up to them to take care of and protect themselves. Otherwise the burden falls on someone else, and externalizing this sacred responsibility for oneself is a mark of an immature soul. It is essential that, rather than looking for a savior or for someone to save, North Node Virgo 6th house people let others be responsible for themselves, while taking responsibility for their own self, their health, their well-being, their peace. Because South Node Pisces 12th house people are attuned to the spiritual and emotional 5D reality, they not only fail to acknowledge the 3D egoic reality but are confused and hurt when the two don't match up. What they must recognize is that these are simply not always in alignment. Our souls might know and feel the spiritual truth, but our egoic mind is not always aligned with our soul. This can be very painful, especially when it comes to seeing the violence and pain of the world, or relationships that can't get off the ground. For example, a South Node Pisces 12th house person might recognize a deep soul connection with someone, but that person is stuck in the egoic mind, held back by their trauma and insecurities, not aligned enough with their soul to actually have a relationship with a South Node Pisces 12th house person. The 3D-focused person might feel anxious around the South Node Pisces 12th house person because they sense the native sees through them, and instead, they may choose someone less emotionally threatening. This can be incredibly painful for the South Node Pisces 12th house person, but what they're learning is that it takes incredible spiritual work for the 3D egoic reality to align with the 5D spiritual reality, and not everyone has been able to do that work yet. Part of their own lesson is to recognize and acknowledge this, and let people go. While they have developed heightened spiritual awareness in the past, it's likely that South Node Pisces 12th house people's understanding is incomplete or even partly erroneous, precisely because they developed that awareness in a secluded environment and weren't truly tested by the world. They are learning to discern between what they want to believe and what actually feels true for them, between reality and fantasy, between intuition and anxiety, between what is helpful and what is harmful, between who can really benefit from their help and who just wants to suck their energy dry, between when they are genuinely serving others and when they are being victimized. In this lifetime, they're meant to take their intuition as hypothesis and check it with the facts through practical observation and application in the real world. Through this system of verifying their hypotheses, they hone their intuition and develop confidence in action. The spiritual in the material, money. Having spent many past lives as monastics who took a vow of poverty, or else being deprived of their belongings through imprisonment of some kind, these folks often have deep blocks to material abundance. Subconsciously, they feel that accumulating money is somehow impure and would endanger their integrity. As a result, they often provide services or give away their creations for little or no pay. But this is a betrayal of the law of justice, which says that everyone should be fairly compensated for their work. They need to recognize that money itself is not impure, it is neutral. Money is not an object or a number, it is energy in flow. To stop the flow of financial energy is to behave unjustly. Financial independence does not always come easily for South Node Pisces 12th house people. In the past, they always had an institution to support them financially and they have little or no experience making their own way in the world. Early in this life, they may have been forced to survive on their own financially, or even to support others before it was their time. Otherwise, it may take them a long time to truly leave the nest, financially as well as physically. Deep down, they may harbor subconscious negative beliefs around money. They may feel guilty for earning or even wanting money, associating it with impurity and materialism. They may view wealthy people as somehow evil. They might believe that one can only accumulate wealth by doing harmful things to people, planet, and animals. Money is therefore tainted for them, but this is an immature view. This may also lead them to be overly generous, even beyond their means, giving lavish gifts to show their love for someone, or feeling so guilty when they encounter someone who has less than them that they give away more than they can afford. These are the shirt off my back kind of people. This tendency to give of themselves for free can also be a perpetuation of their victim mentality. This generosity reveals an inherent contradiction. If giving materially is a token of their love and affection, then receiving materially must relate to the ability to receive emotionally. While their emotional nature can hold them back in so many areas of life, it actually helps North Node Virgo 6th house people to take an emotional and energetic approach to money, to see it as a positive flow of loving energy that needs to stay in circulation so that everyone can benefit. This shift also helps them cultivate an abundance mindset. We can always create more love in the world simply by choosing to be loving. We can do the same with money. Once North Node Virgo 6th house people begin to see money as a form of love and gratitude, it flows to them much more easily, and it is easier for them to accept it. They are no longer selling their time in exchange for a paycheck, they are putting love out into their world through their hard work, and others reciprocate with love and gratitude in the form of remuneration. Money is simply a natural consequence of their love. Consciously or not, South Node Pisces 12th house people expect to be rescued. They think someone will come along and take care of all their material needs forever. But this is not the case. In fact, for them to accept this would go against their karmic lessons. Even if they don't have to, it's essential for them to support themselves financially. It's part of growing up. Romantic idealism versus reality. Due to their past spent in isolation and hermitage, South Node Pisces 12th house people don't have an innate understanding of how to maintain long-term relationships or deal with untrustworthy people. They spent past lives as part of a small collective isolated from the dangers of the world. Everyone they knew was basically trustworthy and moral, even striving for enlightenment or dedication to a deity, and they didn't have to worry about being betrayed. That's why the 12th house is the house of hidden enemies. In this life, when these folks are re-entering the real world, their past experience makes them very naive. As a result, they easily trust the wrong people and are surprised when people behave unethically or dishonestly. This is most dangerous in friendships and romantic partnerships. These folks are true romantics, and their idealism is at its peak in intimate relationships. They can either have such high ideals that no one lives up to their standards and they reject anyone who comes their way, or they can be so compassionate and non-judgmental that they could see the most dangerous, unhinged individual through rose-colored glasses. As in other areas of life, they tend to go to emotional extremes. South Node Pisces 12th house people also tend to value their significant other more than themselves. Their innate selflessness kicks in and they lose themselves in their relationships, making the other person the center of their life. They tend to romanticize and idealize their partner, totally submitting to them. Unless other placements contradict this, they can lose themselves completely, going all in on the person. Their idealization of their partner usually reaches a breaking point at the end of the honeymoon phase, when the power struggle begins. They've built up their image of the person so much that their partner has to fall very far to get off the pedestal that South Node Pisces has put them on. They feel so betrayed at this point, but what they don't realize is that they betrayed themselves, in their own minds, by neglecting the reality of the person. The truth is that falling in love with our image of someone is not genuinely falling in love with them. It's falling in love with our own projections and fantasies. In this way, South Node Pisces 12th house people are incredibly insincere. Their inability to keep in touch with reality makes them not into victims, but liars. It's just that they've deceived themselves, as well as the person who thought the South Node Pisces person actually saw them and loved them for who they are. Both experience a sense of betrayal. This is a danger even in the early stages of a crush, before any relationship has developed. It is exceedingly difficult to keep South Node Pisces 12th house people's fantasies in check, because they have such a strong need to escape. It helps to choose a romantic object who is not in their daily reality. A celebrity is a much safer target for fantasy, as long as they don't try to act on it, of course. When they do fantasize, it's helpful to set a time limit on their daydreams, then switch to an activity that grounds them in the real world. No matter our nodal placement, all of us are prone to projecting the disowned or underdeveloped parts of ourselves onto others, and our romantic partners are usually the targets of our more positive underdeveloped qualities. When we find ourselves crushing on someone, it's important we identify what we like and dislike about them and then reflect on how we have those qualities too, or how we can develop them. The middle way comes naturally when North Node Virgo 6th house people learn to prioritize the relationship itself, not just the other person. This requires them to see themselves as equal to their partner, equally deserving of the love, attention, respect, appreciation, tolerance, forgiveness, and grace they so effortlessly give. Instead of placing themselves below the other person, they must exercise skepticism. Is this person right for me? Are we compatible? Do they place as much importance on the relationship as I do? Virgo is a very skeptical sign, and North Node Virgo 6th house people need to consistently monitor their relationships. Otherwise, their hopes delude them. Mercury, governing intellect and communication, rules Virgo and the 6th house. As always, communication is key. North Node Virgo 6th house people must never assume that the other person knows something, but always make sure they communicate their feelings, boundaries, expectations, and desires. And ask the other person to do the same. The clearer both parties are about what they want to create together, the better their chances for success. They can apply the same techniques of goal setting and practical action to their relationships, too. Most importantly, South Node Pisces 12th house people must avoid getting into relationships expecting the other person to change or waiting for the someday when circumstances will be right and their partner will be perfect, or at least more compatible. This is a recipe for wasted time and lots of tears and regret. They must develop the courage to break things off once they see it's not working. The key is to stay in touch with reality. The problem with purity. North Node Virgo 6th house people are often preoccupied with the idea of purity. Sometimes this can be a full-blown purity complex, especially if they grew up in a religious and especially Christian environment. But even without the sexual hang-ups of purity culture and the damage it causes, these folks can have the subconscious feeling that they are somehow not pure enough, spiritually and morally, to deserve their dreams, or even basic needs like love, comfort, and security. But this is a bottomless pit. No one can ever be pure enough because we are all flawed human beings. The concept of purity is itself an unattainable ideal, and in that way, it isn't real. Purity is a concept human beings have created, not a phenomenon we have observed. At times we believe we observe it in others, but this is always a projection. We cannot know what is in another's heart, mind, and soul. Only we can know how pure or impure we are inside. And if we're honest, we're not pure. Part of South Node Pisces 12th house people's preoccupation with purity is really about self-trust. They want to be able to trust their intuition and desires, but in order to do so, they must ensure that their intuition and desires are morally pure, untainted by ego or malice. Because they are so introspective, they can easily turn their critical eye on their own mind and find all kinds of reasons why they are not coming from the right place or not good enough to be able to trust themselves. This is a very tricky game the mind plays on itself in order to avoid the risk of pursuing what we truly, deeply want. For example, consider a South Node Pisces 12th house person who wants to be an artist. Even though they want to make art in order to connect with and uplift others in an act of selfless service to the collective, they fear that deep down their desire to make art is only coming from their ego and need for attention. So they abandon their artistic path and get involved in non-profits instead. Only to realize that there is ego there, too. No area of human life is free of human foibles, and people can do ostensibly selfless things for completely selfish reasons. Because the South Node Pisces 12th house person talked themselves out of their deep intuitive desire to make art, they are now off path, and to paraphrase a line from the Bhagavad Gita, it is better to fail in one's own purpose than to succeed in someone else's. Now even when they return to art, they know they have lost valuable time and resources, all because they doubted the purity of their motivations to begin with. This is where it helps them to understand the layers of desire. There are, of course, the superficial desires of the human animal, to seek pleasure and avoid pain. This is pure hedonism, to enjoy the whims of the physical body without regard for long-term consequences or effects on others. Then there is the egoic mind, which wishes to preserve a particular self-image, through the status of beauty, money, job, prestige, or moral high ground. This is where we all get most easily lost. The South Node Pisces 12th house person's egoic mind usually wants to preserve their self-image as selfless and being accepted by a particular group. But this is a juvenile way of masking their moral posturing and deceiving both others and ourselves. They are trying to preserve their self-image as a good person at the expense of actually doing the correct, honest thing. More deeply, there is the soul or higher self, the part of us that operates beyond the egoic mind, the watcher, the observer. It's the part of ourselves we tune into during meditation, the intuition that speaks to us in whispers. This is the source of our deepest desires, the ones that transcend the egoic mind. It wants what is in the highest good of all, including ourselves. North Node Virgo 6th house people can access this level more easily than any other placement. Once they tune into it, they will see there is no such thing as you or me, better or worse, no need to judge, no need to be pure, because there's no such thing as impurity in the whole. What South Node Pisces 12th house people don't realize is that they can align their ego with their soul's purpose. When they have a deep conviction, especially about their career or daily purpose, they can trust it because it is coming from their soul. Then when they put their ego in service of that, because the ego is a terrible master, but a wonderful servant, they can truly serve all. Consider the humble bee. Bees are essential to our ecosystems. Without them, even human society would look very different. Countless species of plants depend on them for their reproduction, which has a ripple effect across the planet. But from the bee's perspective, they are just selfishly following their instincts to collect food for their hive. They have no idea what role they play in the grand scheme of things. And they don't have to, they just have to trust their instincts. We can learn a lot from them. The real purification these folks need to is let go of the idea of purity. Instead they must develop a deep trust in themselves. Simply by following their instincts, they play a role larger than they can know, and it's okay not to know. Depth perception. South Node Pisces 12th house people are incredibly deep and sensitive. Unless other placements contradict this, they experience a profound complexity and intensity of emotion. And they are so humble, they assume others are just the same, but they are not. These folks see into the emotional reality of a person sometimes more deeply than the person can see themselves. North Node Virgo 6th house people aren't fooled by the masks people wear, they see into the soul beneath. Because they don't realize how special this skill is, they assume others can see into them just as easily. Not so. In fact, others often sense that the North Node Virgo 6th house person can see into them, and they feel very intimidated. This confuses the North Node Virgo 6th house person, because they don't feel intimidating or powerful at all. Because of this discrepancy between their perception and others, they often walk through life thinking everyone else can see through them the way they see through others. Then, as they gain experience, they realize that not everyone is living life at the same depth that they are. Eventually they learn that most people can't see through them the way they do. On one hand, this can be very liberating. They are free to move through the world as they please, without worrying that everyone sees their anxiety and self-doubt. They can put up a front without worrying others will see through it. On the other hand, this can be very isolating. Sometimes they want to be seen by others, because if they're seen they can be held and known for who they are. It's frustrating to be a sensitive person in this world that does not change to accommodate our sensitivities. However, we don't have a right to demand others accommodate us and our feelings. That's why these folks have to learn to erect strong boundaries and to take care of themselves, and be discerning about who they let into their inner world. They have to learn to communicate their emotions instead of assuming others already know, or acting like they should know. The fact is that most people don't know their own emotions. South Node Pisces 12th house people simply take their own abilities for granted. Oftentimes, even when these folks believe they have communicated a boundary, they might not have done so effectively. Some people really are sensitive enough to get the message, while others need to be hit upside the head. So if North Node Virgo 6th house people assert a boundary but the person's behavior doesn't change, they might need to repeat the message in a stronger way. Continuing to increase the intensity of the message until it is heard is a crucial exercise in self-protection for these folks. It helps them develop self-trust. There are many resources and journal prompts to help you figure these things out in the North Node Virgo 6th house workbook on northnodesignandhouse.com. In fact, South Node Pisces 12th house people's self-awareness often sabotages their interactions with others. Instead of focusing on and being present with the other person, they get lost in an inner monologue and waves of feelings like anxiety and self-consciousness. When they focus on the other person, they begin to feel more confident because they're focused on helping, not on themselves. Focusing on themselves only stresses them out. As long as they remember their motive is to be helpful, they can stay on track and be of practical service, and that feels more empowering. Their depth of feeling can also lead them to act and react in emotionally intense ways, always taking things to the extreme. For example, in a relationship they may spend a long time in their own fantasy version of the relationship instead of checking in with reality. Then when reality hits them they withdraw or even break things off. They feel betrayed by the other person, but what really betrayed them is their own emotional fantasy. In the meantime, they sent inaccurate signals to their mate, who ends up blindsided because they thought things were going so well, when in reality the South Node Pisces 12th house person was just, well, not in reality at all. What these folks need to practice instead is moderation. They've got to constantly check their feelings against the facts, staying present in the situation as it unfolds, so they can have real experiences instead of just self-sabotaging fantasy ones. The path of moderation is found by focusing on the details of what is really going on and working out practical solutions. Journaling can be enormously helpful for these folks, any way of verbalizing their feelings, due to Mercury's rulership of their North Node. It helps them work through their emotions while also getting in touch with reality and analyzing things more objectively. There are many journal prompted included in the North Node Virgo 6th house workbook on northnodesignandhouse.com. From unity consciousness to separation consciousness. At the heart of every religion and spiritual faith, and even of physics and biology, is the knowledge that all that lives emerged from a single source, whether we call it God or the singularity that preceded the Big Bang or life itself. This vague idea is almost universally agreed upon. What Buddhism calls unity consciousness is not only the intellectual awareness of this inherent oneness, but the emotional, psycho-spiritual experience of it, and it is the subject of enlightenment. Yet we are all born into physically separate bodies and raised in cultures and societies that teach us separation consciousness, a state reinforced by our egoic minds and their instinct for self-preservation. This is the belief that all we are is separate from other people, other animals, the earth itself, and the universe at large. When it comes to the nodal axis of astrology, it is my belief that some are born with easier access to unity consciousness than others due to past lifetimes spent in spiritual study, emotional enmeshment, or another kind of merging. These include the water south nodes and some of the air and fire south nodes, including the south node in Pisces in the 12th house. Although we may forget unity consciousness, these folks are among those who subconsciously remember it and can easily access it. It is good even for these placements to strive for the experience of unity consciousness. But once remembered, they must confront the harsh truth of physical reality, that we exist in a material world, in separate bodies. Separation consciousness is often dismissed as an illusion of the physical world and egoic mind, but we incarnate separately for a reason, to learn our nodal lessons, to evolve consciousness, to ascend spiritually. We are here precisely to experience separation. While most of the world needs to learn unity consciousness, for North Node Virgo 6th house people, their lesson is also about separation consciousness. They have spent so many lifetimes dissolving their own ego that they have not adequately experienced the pleasure, vitality, and willpower of having a separate ego, self, and destiny. It is beautiful and fulfilling to be part of the whole, but each part must also be recognized as beautiful and fulfilling in itself. That is the point of separate incarnations. We each have a duty to know, respect, care for, and fulfill the highest potential of the part of the whole that is uniquely ourselves. This is one reason Know Thyself was inscribed upon the Temple of Apollo at Delphi. It is in many ways our sacred responsibility. The ultimate fulfillment of spiritual awareness may just be that both unity and separation are true, and to hold both states of consciousness simultaneously as we move through life, elevating neither one over the other but learning to live as both. The gold in the shadow. Before we conclude, I want to remind you to appreciate the gold in the shadow of your South Node in Pisces in the 12th house. One of the most beautiful things about people with the South Node in Pisces in the 12th house is their loving and compassionate nature. They have the unique ability to truly see others for who they are, not who they appear to be on the surface, but the deep, true, eternal self in all. They are also innately connected to their own higher self, and although we all forget when we're first born into this life, it is easier for South Node Pisces 12th house people to see the self in all and all in the self because they have worked to develop this connection so strongly in their past lives. Once they reconnect with it, they are able to channel this truth for all humankind. With their vivid imaginations, they often excel in artistic endeavors, whether it's music, writing, visual arts, or something else. And thanks to their deep emotions and spiritual connection, they can infuse their creative work with incredible insights that truly teach and uplift others, effectively raising consciousness. These folks are so open-minded, supportive, and non-judgmental, that simply meeting them can be incredibly healing for people. Our South Node isn't only about what we get wrong or do to excess, it also includes what we've mastered and can teach to others. No quality is wholly good or bad, but each one has both a light and a dark manifestation. Once we learn how to express our South Node in a healthy way with good boundaries, aware of its dark side, we can reach back for the gold in the shadow and share its light. We can teach others the skills we've mastered, leading by example and helping others learn their Piscean lessons. Once it is balanced, our South Node also becomes the foundation for our North Node. As with everything, each archetype contains the seed of its opposite, like the yin-yang symbol. It is precisely because South Node Pisces 12th house people understand the spiritual essence of love so well that they are able to turn their skills outward and finally manifest what has hitherto remained hidden in their own hearts and minds. It is through this balance they can finally achieve the sense of peace and oneness for which their soul deeply yearns. Further practice and inquiry. I hope this ebook has been illuminating for you on your personal quest for growth. In all my work, my goal is to help raise the collective level of human consciousness. We are each responsible for doing so, by taking responsibility for our own individual piece of consciousness. With the information I've communicated here, I hope you feel more empowered to take care of your own. I wish to communicate a few more things to look for which may be helpful. First, I didn't just want to dump theory on you. As I wrote these ebooks, I realized there were so many references, books, videos, podcasts, as well as reflection questions and practical actions, that could help you think and problem solve in even more ways, in ways I didn't have the space to delve into in this ebook alone. Conscious of the fact that reading theory is just the tip of the iceberg, I wanted to give you practical ways of applying your new knowledge to your life specifically. That's why I created a workbook for each nodal placement on northnodesignandhouse.com. Recommendations for books, movies, videos, podcasts, and more provide food for thought and explorations of the Virgo 6th house/Pisces 12th house themes. Journal prompts and activity recommendations lead you off of the screen and into the world, where you can be empowered to make a difference in your own life. Even though this book series on the nodes specific to sign and house is a huge leap forward in the collective project of astrological study, each chart is so completely unique that there are still more factors that may influence your specific experience. For some, the path is easier, for others, it seems to be blocked at every turn. While I don't want to overwhelm you with information, focusing simply on the information above is already an enormous project. If you ever feel blocked or confused, here are a few keys in your chart to consider. First, consider your big three, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant, in context of your nodal placement. Ask yourself, why would a soul with these nodal challenges choose a personality with these big three? For example, a North Node Virgo 6th house is likely to have a Pisces Ascendant, and let's say they have a Capricorn Sun with an Aries Moon. With a Pisces Ascendant, the midheaven is likely to be in Sagittarius, The Sunday may be in the 10th house and the moon may be in the 1st or 2nd. Clearly this person still needed to complete some of the lessons of Pisces, so their early life likely engendered some of its themes. But they needed the egoic strength of an Aries moon to experience the healthy self-regard required for Virgo qualities to develop. The Capricorn sun further indicates the need for a strong ego, which also counterbalances the weak ego nature of the South Node. With the sun placed in the 10th house, career is important to this person, and being in an earth sign they're more grounded and practical than the average South Node Pisces individual. With the strength of their ascendant and moon, they are likely to be a pioneer or thought leader of some kind. Yet the North Node indicates the need for logic, detail-orientedness, and practicality, including in their career, and the Capricorn sun only helps them direct their efforts effectively. This person is therefore well equipped to balance a selfless emotional nature with a healthy ego that can assert itself in the world. Second, consider any aspects made to the nodes, less than 4 degrees. You can find plenty of articles online by searching for any relevant aspects, but for the sake of simplicity I will note here that harmonious aspects, trines and sextiles, help, conjunctions challenge, and squares indicate a skipped step, a karmic lesson one completely missed and must redo. In our hypothetical Capricorn Aries chart, let's suppose the Capricorn sun is trine the North Node and sextile the South Node. Remember, an aspect to one end of the nodal axis is simultaneously an aspect to the other end. This means the person's instinctive egoic nature is helping them bridge the gap between the South and North nodes, helping them along their journey. Theirs might be easier than most. However, if the Sagittarius midheaven is squaring the nodal axis, it presents challenges. Conflicts between family and career are likely to thwart their nodal progress. Third, the rulers of the nodes carry enormous weight. In your case, the South Node is ruled by Neptune and the North Node is ruled by Mercury, which is another reason your nodal lessons play out in the mind. The houses of these planets indicate challenges and opportunities, respectively. For example, let's say our hypothetical Capricorn Aries person has Neptune in Sagittarius conjunct the midheaven, also squaring their nodal axis. This deepens their challenges, as they have lots of idealistic illusions around their career path, a tendency left over from past lives that makes the lessons of their Virgo North Node even more important. Meanwhile, let's say their Mercury is in Aquarius in the 11th house. Although it may not exactly aspect their nodal axis, this is a very logical, fact-based placement for Mercury, which aids this person's North Node need to bring more logic and practicality into their daily life. Overall, they have a good mixture of placements and aspects that both help and challenge their nodal path in a way unique to them. It would be the task of many lifetimes to interpret every possible configuration of Big Three, nodal aspects, and nodal rulers in combination with each nodal placement. It has taken me many years just to write these 144 ebooks on the signs and houses of the nodes. But I hope this example has given you a clue of how to suss out any additional challenges or blocks your particular chart may represent. If you're not sure, I recommend finding an astrologer who specializes in the nodes and can interpret your chart specifically. If and when I am personally available, I will make it known on the website. Famous North Node Virgo 6th House individuals. Learning about the lives and choices of your fellow travelers can help you see both healthy and unhealthy ways of leveraging your South Node wisdom and pursuing your North Node purpose. William the Silent, William of Orange, Ezra Pound, Thomas Hobbes, Norman Mailer, Percy Bysshe Shelley, Harry Nielsen, Werner Herzog, Terry Jones, George Clooney, Heath Ledger, Barbara Streisand, Steve Vai, Slobodan Milosevic, George Lopez, Clara Bow, Edward Bach, Her, David Crosby, Deng Xiaoping, Eric Naorulo, Ayumi Hamosaki, B.J. Novak, Edgar P. Jacobs, Madeline Kahn, Myrna Loy, Sandra D., Michelle Lee, Agnes B.,